Hello, guys. Uh, Today, I would like to talk to you guys about how I'm using generative AI to create technical content and maybe give you guys some ideas as well. So usually the workflow, the process to create a technical content, it would start with an idea, then I would develop, test it a little bit. Usually I would use Google Colab notebooks or Python notebooks to test it and prototype a little bit. Then I would refine and turn it more closer to a product. So it could be writing a blog post, creating a video, or writing a whole code base or an app that I want to distribute and show with my audience. So usually the first part, the where we have the ideas, where we try a bunch of things, it's super exciting, it's super fun. We get to learn a little bit more, it's engaging. So this is the nice part that we like, that we usually like. But then getting that idea, getting that prototype, if it's especially if it's code, that we need to add a lot of documentation. We need to add the best practices like typing. If it's Python, we need to find small bugs, format a little bit, maybe create some classes, create some objects to be more, let's say, streamlined. And also, if we are writing, let's say, technical content like a blog post or a video script, at least for me, it's usually really hard to get started with the content. So the first few lines of the blog post, the overall shape of the video script, how it's going to be. This is usually the hardest part. And it's usually, especially for those two topics, uh, that I have been using generative AI with great success. I will show some examples and I hope it will help you guys as well. So for this example, I will show you guys this actually one project that I'm creating right now, and probably I will release some very soon. The idea, this is the project here, it's just a draft that I'm creating in a Google Colab notebook, and it is on how I can use Google Colab as a server, as a platform to serve models. So the idea is that maybe I'm just working with testing some small ideas with models, and I'm serving them locally. But before renting or no, buying a VM or a larger machines, I want to test on a larger scale of how that's going to be. So for this idea, Google Colab can be a good thing. So it's basically free. We have some GPUs here, but it's also super cheap to scale up a little bit more. So the idea is that this content here shows you guys how you can use Google Colab to serve and host a model on Ollama and access it to a remote server. Okay, so it's basically a server. It will work as a VM here. So I have created the code here. I had some documentations. The code is clean. Okay, but it's not presentable to the audience yet. So usually what I would do is that I would get this as our starting point and actually start to create some content. I will show you guys how I can do using some Google tools. Here I will be using uh, Vertex AI, but you could be doing basically the same on Google AI Studio. But let me show you guys here. So let me start by adding the notebook. So I can just go here and download it as a Python file. I have it already here, so I will add here as a context to the prompt. And let's say that I want to write a blog post. So I have already a prompt ready here. I am going to use Gemini 2.0 Pro, which is a very large and efficient model. The results are usually super good. And I can click here on generate. So let's see at the result. Okay, so yeah, the title looks really good. And you can see that already capturing what I'm doing at the notebook, like hosting my my Ollama model on a Google Colab. Okay, so it basically has all these steps here. It's getting the code, and everything is looking really, really good. So it's even copying parts of the code here. So this would be one use case. Another one that's very common for me is that I will get this initial notebook that is just a draft, but I want just to streamline and improve a little bit. So I can use a prompt like this one here that is basically just telling the model to refactor, add documentation, typing, and other, let's say, sometimes can be the boring stuff that's a little bit more technical and can take quite some time. But yeah, I just want to do focus at least on the experimentation and fun part of the process. Okay, so it's keeping my markdown documentation here, and you can see the code that it's creating. So yeah, we can see here, at least for this function, it's adding the typing, the return type, It's also added documentation, and it's probably going to improve everything a little bit. So it's adding arrays here. So yeah, basically it refactored the code following the instructions. Yeah, so those would be some examples. Another thing that maybe I can do for some specific cases is that once I get the code, maybe I want to create a whole code base for it. So this is usually quite common because on my personal projects, I start with a notebook and then I create a whole GitHub repository that it's easier to share as well. You can take a look at my GitHub. I have many there already. So also Gemini is quite useful for this. Usually both for code-based creation and also for the blog posts, what happens is that the output is not necessarily as good as I want. So usually what I will do is that I will take this as our starting point and just refine and improve it a little bit more, especially for the blog post, because usually for me it's hard to just get started. You get the first few lines, the first couple of paragraphs. So when the model creates the blog post, most of the times I'm not using like any things or most of the things that the model outputs, but it just helped me getting started. So if you have a hard time writing blog posts or creating this kind of content, I suggest you to give it a try because it's easy, especially on AI Studio. It's free and it can help you a lot. Okay, so but this already would be helping a lot. The other thing that I was doing as well is that the slides that I showed you guys, I also use generative AI for it. So what I would do, for instance, here is what I did for this slide that I have created. I asked Gemini to create text to image prompt for me. So you can see here, I asked it to create like a thumbnail or a cover for this kind of content that I'm creating right now. So the first slide was this. So it will suggest a few prompts here. I can pick them, also go here for at Vertex AI and use the imaging model. I will just copy pasted the prompt suggestion and it created these uh, nice images that I can use as a thumbnail or as the initial slide for my presentation. I think that I used this one here. So this is also super useful because I have not very creative to create these kind of images, and this is like have no license issues, so you can just use whenever you want. All of these slides here that I have used, I asked Imogen to create for me. So especially these ones that have people, you can see that the image is super good. But they can also create sketches, sometimes without small issues. But yeah, you can always keep trying and you get good ones. But the other thing that I wanted to show to you guys is this project that I have created here, the Content Creators AI tools, and it basically tries to solve and gather all of the things, all of that ideas, all of that tools to create technical content. So sometimes you could be using Imogen from Vertex AI, but you could also be using a model from AI Studio. You could be using something from Claude. You could be using something from ChatGPT. So uh, you can have a repository like this one. The idea in the future will be to centralize everything. You could also be using local models, right? So this is just a collection of tools that I think are relevant and I use personally to create content. So right now it's only supporting Google AI Studio and also Vertex AI, but I have plans to improve it a little bit, as you can see in the to-do list. Other thing that I want to support here as well, like audio generation, image and video generation as well. But I will show you guys how it looks like. So if you also want to give it a try, you can come here. I have the description here that what I will be doing, the kinds of inputs, the Gradio app, and also how I created the model. And also how you can set up everything, uh, the requirements that you need, a few examples here that I will go over in this video still, explanation about everything, and also what I want to do next. So let me open the app here. Okay, so let me get the URL. Okay, so this is how the interface looks like. You have three kinds of input. You can put free text. It could be like a blog post here or something that you wrote. You can also input a file like we were doing before, or you can use a repository. So let's start with the file. That is what we were doing before. I will put the notebook here. yeah, the same notebook, this one, and I will go a little bit down here and say that the input type that I'm giving is a code, and I want to create, let's say, code improvement. So you can see that it gave me a prompt here. This is like a default prompt that I think it's good enough for most use cases. So you can reuse it, or you can add anything. If you want, you can also remove a few lines or update it. Then I can create and generate content. So you can see some information here aside. Also, something interesting is that it counts the number of tokens that I'm going to use. You can see here. Okay, the output was generated. We can see here something that I have added to make it a little bit easier to look into the output is this show markdown version. So you can see, especially now that it's code, it's easier. You can also click here to copy the content to your clipboard. Okay, so you can see that this is the documentation part, but then we start to see the code. So the setup, parameters, everything here. You can see usually create some functions and also add the type in here, the output documentation. So basically all of the requirements that we added. So let me remove it. We can see that I have various types. So you can input text, you can input code, and you have other outputs. So it's very easy to customize this. So if you want to extend, also be free to do it. But I'm just adding more features here as I'm just creating different kinds of content. I'm going to update here as well. So yeah, the rest of the stuff is pretty basic. But the other thing that I wanted to show you guys here is that this interface also supports you providing a repository, a whole repository. So for this case, I'm using Git ingest, which is a library that allows you to parse repositories into a LLM-friendly format. So you can put the URL of the repository, or if it's a repository or a code base that is in your local environment, you can just put the path. So let me put the path, which is the current path. So it will be using the current notebook, the current code base repository as the input. So let's say that I want to parse the source, the content of the source folder, but only the Python files. And I want to skip these other files here that are not interesting for me. So we can click in parse repository, and I can see the outputs here. So it will give me the number of files that were analyzed, the estimation of tokens from the content, the structure of the repository. So you can see all the files here following these requirements that I added, and then the actual content. So they are separated by these artifacts here, but I have basically all the files here. So now that the GitHub was parsed, I can, okay, let me remove this, and this will be used as prompt to my model. So let's say that I want to use this code base and create a README file. So I have some files here. So usually what I do is that for me it's very easy to create all the code base and everything, but being able to generate a very good README file, it's not very easy. So there are a lot of files that you need to go through, a lot of configurations that you need to take a look. So just prompting the model to give you a template, some starting text for this file is very efficient. So again, let's take a look at the Markdown version. And you can see basically everything here. So the title of the README page, summary, how to use it, some examples, usage, the setup, everything that is required. And what I have seen is that usually if your code base was well written and it's well organized, this output here, it works really well. So it's a very, very good starting point. And especially for people creating open source content, having a good README page is super important. So if you look at my repositories, I always make sure that it's something very good. So it's easier for people that are coming to the repository to have a good idea. Okay, so this was most of what I wanted to share. If you want to take a look, make sure to visit the Content Creator AI Tools repository, and you can give me some ideas. So if you give it a try, please let me know what you find. And if you think that something here is missing, just let me know, and I can add some to the roadmap of features that I want to add. As I said, this is something that I'm personally going to use for my use cases, so I'll be maintaining and updating it from time to time. Okay, so I hope you enjoy it and see you around.